Are you going to be asking me questions?
Greetings, family. We are now live. As you can see, we have Leader Bandaka joining us for the Sister Shanice show. This is a show where we keep it real. We talk about issues that are impacting on us from an African-centered perspective. So all of you who was just joining us on the panel discussion and are now coming over to join us here to hear from our brother Leader Bandaka, we thank you so much. So we're just going to give everybody a moment or two to join, and as we wait for our audience to switch over and join us, let's welcome our brother Leader Bandaka. Welcome, Leader. How are you today?
Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Giving thanks and praises, Sister Shanice. I am richly blessed, and I am giving thanks and praises unto the Most High, the Creator of the universe, the God of Africa, who we affirm reigns supreme. And we are thankful unto the Creator always through the spirits of Mukuru, our great ancestors, the only natural medium between the divine Creator of the universe and our earthly lives, our earthly existence. And we are just thankful for life, for the meaning and purpose of life, for health and strength and daily food. We're thankful for the rising of Amen-Ra, the sun, upon this day of Ujima, the third day of the week, the third, where we acknowledge the third principle of the Unguza Saba, and indeed we name the days of the week not in honor and praise of European gods and goddesses, but in affirmation of the African principles of the Unguza Saba. So I'm blessed, and I trust that all who are listening in, all the African family who have joined us, are also experiencing the richest and most abundant of blessings. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. And yes, I am good, my brother. You know, I am absolutely fine, delighted to, you know, have you as a guest this evening. Looking forward to your teaching. You're a man, you know, in terms of your breadth and the depth of your knowledge, you know, we just can't hear enough from you. So I'm honored to have you this evening in our company to teach us, and also for the next couple of strongs as well. So family, make sure you have your pens and your paper ready, because, you know, we're going to be taught, you know, tonight by our leader. So as you join us in the chat, let us know where you are logged on and viewing us from. We want to know, you know, the reach of our global audience. So I can see we've got Africa Queen in the house saying greetings, Sister Shanice and Brother Bandaka. We've got Kimani in the house saying greetings, my mighty brother Mandaka. We've got Rosemary saying grand rising and blessings. We've got Orbia Man rising up, brother leader. We've got Jaglenda saying Tendai Mwari, Kimani rising up, and yes, rising up all the family as you join us. Please remember to give us a thumbs up and to like this broadcast so it could actually reach a wide audience. Rise up, Bobby, watching us from Durham, NC. Where's Durham, NC? Sorry, excuse my ignorance where that one is concerned. So family, yeah, please do spread the words to family and friends and let them know that we have a really interesting discussion happening this evening. Brother Leader, the show that we had just before, we were talking about the increased militarization that's happening on the continent at the moment. We're looking and acknowledging the fact that the US have got their army bases all over Africa, so has the UKKK, so has China, so has France, you know, even India. numerous countries got large military bases and operations happening on the continent, and we're also equally seeing an increase the amount of so-called militia group activities happening, you know, and as we were acknowledging on that earlier show, someone is training them, you know, someone is arming them with the latest armory and weapons and sophisticated technology, you know, somebody knows, you know, there are armies who know personnel and intelligence that know a lot about these so-called militia groups who all seem to be, you know, very active in the region where there's oil in Africa. You know, that's a conversation we were having earlier. As we wait for people to join us before we get into our conversation today, I wonder if you have some comments, or do you have any concerns about the militarization of these so-called jihadists and all these other groups, you know, that have been given these names that are supposedly operating on the continent, my brother? Your mute is on, my brother. Please take yourself off mute.
Tendai Mari. First of all, let me bring greetings to my beloved brothers and sisters, to the royal elders, the queens and kings and princesses and princes of great Mama Africa that are tuning in at this moment. And as always, I bring greetings in the most precious, powerful, and bountiful name of our motherland, Kebulan Mama Africa, in the sacred spirits of our most gracious ancestors, and in a prayer for oneness, hope, and prosperity for all African people upon the face of Mother Earth. Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Giving thanks and praises, and thank you for your kind words that you've spoken, my beloved sister, and the respect that you have bestowed upon me. I would like to say all respect and honor is well received and reciprocated. I hope you know that I and the Al-Kebulan Revivalist movement are in awe, no less, in awe of you and the work that you're doing tirelessly for the upliftment and the enlightenment of our people, and you do it so well. So we continue to pray to the Creator to continue to strengthen you and to empower you and to give you the energy and the zeal. And we call upon our people out there who have been participating, logging into your program, Sister Janice, to continue to support in every conceivable way, not least financially, because I know that there will be a cost, increasing and mounting cost to the dedication and the commitment that you're making to our people. So I just wanted to just drop that, if I may. And I want to hail your king, Brother Errol, as well, because I know he's always there with you, you know, supporting you, working alongside you. You know, in as much as my queen, Sister Kai, I don't know what I would do without her, or where I would be without her. So let me just hail up Brother Errol as well. 10-9 Martin, send him my love. Needless to say, my beloved sister, that I fully concur with the concerns that you have relayed. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to tune into the show. I had hoped that I would have been able to catch at least the last half an hour, but not even that I was able to do. So it would have been good to have actually heard some of what was said, but just feeling the spirit and for what you have conveyed, I think our concerns about the present militarization of the African continent, not in our interest, but in the interest of foreign forces and foreign concerns, is a justifiable cause for serious reflection of you know, for us as a people to seriously reflect on what the implications are for our continent, for our people on the continent, and for us as Africans in the diaspora. When the United Snakes of America, otherwise known as the United States of America, has its troops in at least 35 of the 54 African nations. It is serious cause for concern when we consider the avaricious appetite of the United States for power, domination, and control, when we consider how narcissistic the United States is as a nation, how obsessed they are with their own power, with their own image in the world, we realize that we have a very, very serious problem, because no nation is going to spend billions, perhaps even trillions, disseminating their forces all over a continent, so-called training and providing logistical equipment for the military forces of our continent, in order to empower our continent to defend and protect its own interests. Because the interests of Africa and Africans are antithetical, are the complete opposite of the interests of the United States of America. Ditto France. France has its troops in at least 14 African countries. And be aware, the French and the Americans are very close. They work together, they support each other. Yeah? So wherever America exists, France is never far away. Wherever France exists, America is never far away. They work hand in glove. So this is the entire African continent. And you mentioned India. India is training forces on the African continent. You have China, who has at least 2,000, an army of 2,000 in Djibouti. Why are they there? To defend African interests? That makes no sense. No, an army of any nation is trained and equipped to defend and protect the interests of that nation. It takes its instruction from its civilian leadership, its commander-in-chief, who is also the chief executive of that nation's administration. And so they're there to take the instructions of the American president or the French president or the Chinese leadership as regards protecting the interests of the United States of America or France or China, not to serve the interests of Africa, and certainly not to fight terrorism, as they would put it, or for peacekeeping purposes. This whole issue of terrorism needs to be seriously interrogated. Seriously interrogated, because if we understand that in its present dispensation, it was predicated on the so-called attack or bombing of the Twin Towers in the United States of America. And I want brothers and sisters to just think for a moment that think about the official account of what happened. 2 airplanes flew into these massive, colossal buildings. These buildings that are made up of over 100,000 tons of masonry and 100,000 tons of metal. That's over 200,000 tons of heavy material. And these little airplanes flew into the top of these two massive colossuses. At the top, these airplanes disintegrated as soon as they hit the building. The fuel from these airplanes, the experts say, would have been exhausted within 15 minutes. Yet, these buildings collapsed. All the masonry pulverized to dust. All the metal melted. It turned molten metal. What caused that? Jet engine does not generate, or jet engine fuel, rather, does not generate sufficient, and the experts say, does not generate sufficient heat to melt an ounce of metal. So what caused over 100 tons of metal to melt? Experts observing that said, the only way buildings ever come down in that way, and just think, these massive buildings collapse within an hour to an hour and a half. Think about it. Grenfell burned for 48 hours. It's still standing. The structure is still there. It's gutted, but it's still, the structure is still there. But these two massive buildings collapsed, pulverized to dust. The metal melted in less than 2 hours. Sorry, my beloved sister, if I don't attend to my computer, it's going to cut out in a second. Can you bear with me a moment, please?
Yes, yes. Go ahead. Yes. Wow,
Sorry
family, you know, our leader has broken it down. When you think about it for real, you know, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be analyzing what's going on for ourselves. We can't be taking all of our news, the mainstream. We can't be letting them tell us what happened. We've got to, you know, apply sciences and bits of some thoughts ourselves. Leader, you know, please continue. Are you ready to continue?
Yes, I am. Yes, okay, we're good now.
Okay. Good now. Well, we're with you, leader, on you know, we're looking at this more deeply. I'm certainly looking at this a lot more deeply, given it's much more thought now from what you're saying. And so are people in the chat. And we welcome your comments in the chat, people, and we will bring in your contributions. Yes, leader.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, we have to inform ourselves properly. I want to inform brothers and sisters who may not be aware, some may be aware, but some may not be aware of an organization called Architects and Engineers for 911 Truth. Architects and Engineers for 911 Truth. This is, as the name suggests, a group of over 2,000. There may well be nearer 3,000 now, but there were 2,000 and something the last time I checked, of architects, engineers, physicists, and other scientists who are experts on these issues. They are experts on building technology. They are experts on physics and various other sciences relevant to this particular issue. And when they saw what unfolded, they were flabbergasted, and they formed this organization because they say that the official account makes no scientific sense. It defies science. And as a result of that, these experts who hitherto had believed in the integrity of the American establishment and would never have imagined that they would find themselves in a position where the establishment presents an official account of an incident that cost the life of 3,000 Americans, and that official statement makes no sense whatsoever, and lead them to believe that the statement that has been put out by the government raises more questions than it answers. Richard Gage is the person who heads up that organization. He's the person who founded the organization and heads up that organization. It's worth going online and reading up or going on YouTube and watching some of the footage that they have. And they break it down very, very clearly that what we saw on the 11th of September in so-called 2001 had never happened before in history and has never happened since. And that the only way that buildings have ever collapsed in the way that they did on that day is through controlled demolition. Controlled demolition. There is no way. And then you also have to check pilots for 911 Truth. A group of pilots have organized themselves to challenge the government because they're also saying that the maneuvers that the alleged bombers, those who hijacked the airplanes, the hijackers and the bombers, the maneuvers that they made in order to fly that airplane for over an hour, to keep that airplane in the air for over an hour, and to fly it with geometric precision into that building, even they, as experienced pilots, would have huge challenges commanding that kind of maneuver.
Oh.
They are saying that there is no way that novices could have commandeered those airplanes and flew them in the way that they did with geometric precision into the Twin Towers and hit twice into the Twin Towers. There is a former head of Army intelligence, Albert Subelbein, I think his last name is, who also went to the Pentagon on the day. He was already retired, but he was still in contact with the Pentagon and still doing work with the Pentagon when 911 happened. And he said when he went to the site and he observed the damage that was done to the building, the one thing he was clear about is that that was not an airplane that hit hit the Pentagon. And he could not understand how it was that such whatever missile, and he uses the word missile, whatever missile hit that building, he could not understand how the Pentagon, which is the most guarded entity in the entire planet, did not detect this advancing missile and was not able to intercept it. Yeah. So these are people who are embedded in the establishment. This is not, I'm not giving a Pan-African analysis here. These are people who these are Europeans who are embedded in the system, who believed hitherto in the American dream, who after 911, having made their professional observations, are left with very, very serious concerns. And that is what the so-called war on terror is predicated on, including the African continent. And we don't need to even go into the invasion of Iraq. Everybody now knows that that was predicated on a monumental lie that has now been exposed. That's not in dispute anymore. Yeah, and it's interesting that Britain's weapon inspector, Dr. David Kelly, who had expressed uh, his disagreement with the notion that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction which could be deployed in 45 minutes, and he was the person who they said had spilled the beans that the document that the government was using was not an intelligence document, but was the thesis of a university graduate, which they had, in his words, sexed up, or the words that were attributed to him, sexed up. Well, he went for a walk in the woods and never returned, as did Robin Cook, a government minister, senior government minister, who resigned from the government because he was so disgusted with the chicanery. He resigned publicly, disassociating himself from the actions of the government. He also went for a walk, like Dr. David Kelly, and never returned home.
Yes.
Tendai
Mwari, wow. And, you know, if they're prepared to take out their own, hey, what more are they prepared to do to us, my brother? And as you said, you know, in terms of their supposed war against terror, you know, this huge lie. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense at all. Those two small aeroplanes, in the way that you've described it, causing the extent of the destruction that we saw of the Twin Towers. I mean, to me, it just resembles a controlled explosion. You know, when they are demolishing these large buildings, that's exactly what we saw happen there. Two controlled explosions, as you said, you know, to justify their so-called war on terror. And when it comes to the continent of Africa, as we know, they are, you know, protecting their so-called interests. Their interests, our resources, our minerals, they're calling their interests.
Absolutely.
And that's what they are there protecting. And, you know, so the last show was really talking about the increase in the militarization on the continent of Africa. And as you've mentioned as well, the US, France, you know, India, China, all these countries with their military bases, carrying out military activities on the continent, very, very concerning indeed. And of course, you know, there's the history that we've had, you know, on the continent as well. And so let's go over to the discussion that we're going to be having today, leader, that we're homing in on today. And that is the title for today's discussion is Revolutionary African Leaders, Assassinations and Coups d'etats, a Historical Perspective. As we know, Africa has a long history of exploitation and impoverishment, and this is primarily due to outside interference in its internal affairs. And in fact, according to numerous news sources, France alone is responsible for at least 22 assassinations of African leaders. Additionally, according to Luigi Di Maio, Italy's deputy prime minister, France has never stopped colonizing Africa, and its colonial style policies in Africa are impoverishing Africa's. Plus, until today, there are 14 African countries paying a colonial tax to France, without which it's claimed France would slide down to becoming a third world country. And, you know, I remember when those comments were made, France was very upset about that indeed. I thought we were going to see, you know, a war emerging between France and Italy over those comments. But how true it is, you know, they continue to exploit Africa and continue to exploit Africa until today. And if we look into the history, which we're going to do now with Brother Leader Bandaka, of the assassinations that has been happening in Africa, you know, we certainly don't want to return to those days. And I know that there are so many lessons that can be learned from looking into the history of Africa. Brother Leader Bandaka, when we're talking about assassinations on the continent of Africa, please, if you can give us, you know, some of the numerous examples of some of our revolutionary leaders who were taken out because they wanted to represent the interests of the people rather than the interests of the colonialists. Over to you, please, Brother Leader, for an educational enlightenment around these issues, please. Please take you're on mute, Leader. Please unmute yourself.
I'm learning, sis.
We all are.
Be gentle with me, I'm learning. Okay. I want to start off with a appeal to the hearts and the minds and the souls, a revolutionary appeal, a revolutionary call to the hearts and the minds and the souls of every African who is tuned in to this program this evening. You see, I know I can't see you, brothers and sisters. You can see me, but I can feel your presence. I know you are there, and I know that you are keenly engaged. And I want to draw on some word sounds from the song Revolution, penned and sung by that great cultural icon, brilliant singer, Dennis Brown. He has a song entitled Revolution, in which he says, do you know what it means to have a revolution? And what it takes to make a solution? Fighting against downpression, battering down depression. Then he says, are you ready? Are you ready to stand up and fight this revolution? Are you ready to stand up and fight it just like soldiers? Then he says, many are called, few are chosen. Many are called, few are chosen. Then he says, if you want to live on, live on forever, you've got to love each other. I want to start off with that this evening, if I may, beloved brothers and sisters, and speak to your African hearts and your African minds and your African souls, and ask you, beloved, are you ready to stand up and fight? Do you know what it is to have a revolution? Because otherwise, if we don't know what it is to have a revolution and what it takes to make a solution, if we're not here to participate in a revolution, if we're not here to solve our problem, to make a solution, if we're not ready to stand up and fight this revolution like soldiers, then this is a talking shop. And I think I know Sister Shanice well enough to know that she didn't set this thing up just so we can come and entertain ourselves and inform ourselves. But she set this thing up as a way of mobilizing our people to engage seriously in our liberation fight. So this is what I want to start off with, brothers and sisters. What are we going to do with all the information we've received from Sister Shanice's show and all of the other sources from which we have extrapolated important information? What are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with it, beloved brothers and sisters? Because we have a serious challenge as a people, as an African people around the world, as African people, as the natural inhabitants, the natural descendants, the natural people of the land called Africa. Ancient name, or one of the ancient names, Al-Kebulan, mother of creation. That's our motherland. And it's important that we understand the implications of that. We have a great scholar, warrior scholar, the late Baba John Henrik Clark, who said, no other people have ever had to suffer the way we have had to suffer, mainly because we have always had and still have something the world wants, can't do without, and don't want to pay for. Something the world wants, can't do without, and don't want to pay for. What is that? It is the 13 million square miles of the richest expanse of land on the planet. Our motherland, Mama Africa. And allow me to just give a backdrop, because we have to understand the context in which these assassinations are taking place, the context in which these aliens have their military boots on our soil, the context in which our resources, our land is being raped every day for its natural resources. We have to understand the context, beloved brothers and sisters. But it's not only the resources of the land and the land itself, it's also the natural genius of the African. Because the wealth of the ecology of the African continent has endowed the African mind, body, and spirit with something supremely beneficial to humanity that only seems to exude itself from the soul and the mind and the intellect of the African. No other people on the planet have demonstrated the genius that African people have historically demonstrated. In fact, it is on the African genius that world civilization rests. Modern civilization, it is on the African genius. I'm contextualizing, beloved brothers and sisters. It's important that we understand the power of our motherland. Africa, as I said, 13 million square miles. Some sources will tell you it's 12. I read one book, one time it said, European book, that said 11.6. African-centered scholars tell us that it is at least 13 million square miles. At least 13 million square miles. If they say it's 12, then it probably is even 24. Because they're always underestimating Africa and Africans. We know that. Yes? But our scholars say at least 13 million square miles. It's interesting to note. And then they tell us that Africa is underpopulated. I want to drop that in your head, brothers and sisters, because that's a monumental lie. But there's a reason why they tell us that as well. But think about this. Think about this. Let's look at some of the richest and most powerful countries in the world. Richest in terms of their possession of wealth. Richness in terms of their control of the African continent. And as I've said, I don't think I ever complete a message about Africa and Africans without reminding our people of a fundamental principle of global geopolitics, which is whoever controls Africa rules the world. You need to understand that, beloved. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. Everybody knows that except the African. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. Why do we need to know this? Because to control Africa, you must control Africans. To control Africa, you must control Africans. To control Africans, you must conquer Africans. To conquer Africans, you must maintain Africans in a state of oppression, exploitation, and degradation, so that these Africans will never know their true power potential. They will never recognize their motherland and the beauty and the richness of their motherland. They will never be proud of who they are. They will never be proud of what they have inherited from nature, from the creator and nature itself. So you get Africans running away from Africa because we've been told many lies, and then you get these aliens running to Africa. Why are they running there, beloved brothers and sisters? I'm going to come to that in a minute. But let's be clear. The richest country in the world presently is the United States of America. The United States of America is about 3.6 million square miles. Think about it. Africa is 13 million square miles. Think about it, brothers and sisters. America, 3.6 million square miles with a population of about 330 million people. China, the second richest, rated the second richest country in the world. China is about 3.7, almost the same size as the United States of America, 3.7 million square miles. Remember, Africa is 13 million square miles. So now we can fit the United States and China into Africa. Are we following this? We can fit the USA and China, the two richest and greatest powers in the world today. And remember, China is on the heels of America to overtake America as the number one economy, the most powerful economy in the world. You following this, beloved brothers and sisters? Another, let's throw in with that, Europe as another rich region of the world, perhaps in terms of possession of wealth. Europe as an entity is probably the richest geographical entity, geopolitical or geoeconomic entity in the world. Europe is 3.9 million square miles. So if you add 3.7 and 3.7, you get 7.4, and you add 3.9 to that, you get 11. You get 11.3. Following me? You still have room for India, 1.3 million square miles. And its population of 1.3, China's population is 1.4 billion. India's population is 1.3 billion. Europe's population is 750 million. The populations of China, the USA, Europe, India, I'll tell you something too. You can throw Japan in. You can throw Japan into the mix, brothers and sisters. About 125,000 square miles is Japan. When you add up the populations of all of these, of the richest countries in the world, when you add up, you can fit them all into the African continent. None of them, collectively or individually, none of them have the aggregate of natural resources that Africa has. So Africa would still be wealthier than all of them put together. Africa would even be 100 times wealthier than all of them put together. These are the richest countries in the world now. And their population would be approaching 4 billion people. All of those could fit into the African continent. Yet the population of Africa is 1.2 to 1.3 million. Billion. And they tell us that Africa is overpopulated. You see my point, brothers and sisters? They tell us Africa is overpopulated, when in fact, Africa is grossly underpopulated. Not just underpopulated, grossly underpopulated. And Africa is grossly underpopulated because, as this brilliant warrior scholar, author of this book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, Walter Rodney, demonstrates to us in this book that Africa's population has been depleted over hundreds of years of what, he doesn't use the word Ma'afa, but I'm introducing the word Ma'afa from Mama Marimba Annie, who uses that Kiswahili word, which means colossal destruction. The great destruction of African humanity, which has been going on for the last 500 years under the Europeans and 1400 years under the Arabs. And the analysis we get from Baba Walter Rodney showed that at the turn of the century, the 20th century, 1900, Africa's population was grossly depleted. Africa's population was grossly depleted compared to Europe and to Asia's population. Because Africa is the womb of creation and the cradle of civilization. We have been populating Mama Africa before any other people populated any other part of the universe. And we were here a long time. There are 6 stages of human evolution, according to the evolutionists. 2 stages of Australopithecine. From Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus gracile, or Australopithecus africanus. Then we have Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens sapien. All of those stages of human evolution is original to the African continent. And that Africans began to leave the African continent and began to inhabit other parts of the world before any of these other people began to manifest. So the African continent should be advanced in its population compared to other continents, but that's not the case because of the Ma'afa. Not only were millions of Africans, and I think in Baba Walter Rodney's calculations, about 300 million Africans were removed from the African continent. Not only were we removed from the African continent, we were also slaughtered on the African continent. Now think about that, beloved brothers and sisters. So our population at the turn of the 20th century, according to this brilliant scholar, was at least 300 million less than it should have been. So Africa is not underpopulated, beloved. Africa is not underpopulated. And we need to know, beloved, that our mama Africa provides 60% of the world's most arable land, most fertile land. That's nearly 2/3 of the most fertile land in the world is in Africa. It has been said by various sources that the Congo alone, which is the richest expanse of land on the planet, there's nowhere on the planet that's richer than the Congo, which is in the center of the African continent. The Congo alone can feed the entire planet for at least 50 years. The Congo alone. Why? Why is there poverty on the African continent? No other people have had to suffer the way we've had to suffer. Mainly because we have always had and still have something the world wants, can't do without, and don't want to pay for. What is it that the world wants, can't do without, and don't want to pay for? Well, let's start with the arable land. The wealth, the agricultural wealth of the African continent beyond any other region in the world, beyond any other continent in the world. We Africans are nearly 20% of the entire global population. And as I've said, civilization started in Africa. Not only is Africa the womb of creation, it is the cradle of civilization. All that went into the civilizing of human activity had its foundation in Africa, among Africans. We gave science and technology to the world. We gave mathematics to the world. We gave astrology and astronomy to the world. We gave language and communication to the world. What they called hieroglyphics, we called medunetcha. Not only was it a writing system or a language system, it was a philosophical system. They called it the mystery system because it was a mystery to them. It wasn't a mystery clearly to our ancestors, but it was a mystery to them. All of the philosophers, the most celebrated philosophers of Europe, all of them had their education. The summit of their education took place on the African continent because the African Nile Valley, in particular Kemet, was the place during the times of these Greco-Roman philosophers. All of them, Plato, Socrates, Anaximenes, Thales, all of them, beloved brothers and sisters, all of them. Pythagoras, we hear of the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All of them. Pythagoras did not have the so-called Pythagorean theorem. When he went to Kemet, he didn't know it, he didn't have it. He came back to Europe with that knowledge. Is everybody with me? Africa, beloved brothers and sisters, has almost 10% of the world's oil. And I'm here to tell you that's a gross underestimation. There's oil all over Africa. Oil springing up all over Africa. Nigeria, Libya, Sudan, Angola, the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, the Gambia, Mozambique, all over the African continent. I think even Zimbabwe found some oil all over the African continent. The Chinese some years ago made some comment that there's more oil in the Sudan than all of OPEC put together. And the best quality oil. That was the observation of the Chinese, beloved brothers and sisters. But no other people let me repeat it, no other people have had to suffer what we've had to suffer. Mainly because we have always had and still have something the world wants, can't do without, and don't want to pay for. Africa has 90% of the world's platinum, 90% of the world's cobalt. Cobalt is vital to jet engine, building jet engines. Can't build jet engines without cobalt. Can't develop industrial technology without cobalt. 90% of cobalt comes from the African continent. 50% of the world's gold supply comes from the African continent. Think about it, beloved brothers and sisters. And yet the gold is stored in European banks. The gold is stored in European banks. Our currencies have no weight on the global scale. African currencies are like toilet paper. And yet we have all of these natural resources, these most coveted strategic resources. 66% of the world's manganese comes from Africa. 35% of the world's uranium. No nuclear technology without uranium. And 2/3 of the world's uranium comes from the African continent. 35% of the world's uranium comes from the African continent. 75% of the world's coltan, 3/4 of the world's coltan. Without coltan, we couldn't be having this conversation on Zoom. Every laptop, every flat screen TV, every mobile phone has coltan in it. Cannot build this kind of technology without coltan, 3/4 of which are found on the African continent, beloved brothers and sisters. And we could go on and on. Rubber. Nowhere in the world do you find rubber more than on the African continent. In West Africa, in Central Africa, both the Congo, Central African Republic, Sierra Leone, all those are rich sources of rubber. Look at rubber and how important rubber is in modern civilization. No cars, no buses, no airplanes without rubber. Bauxite, which is a raw material for aluminium, right? The overwhelming majority of that comes from the African continent. So this is what we have to understand, beloved brothers and sisters. And so we must know that having enslaved African people for hundreds of years, having ravaged the African continent for hundreds of years, stealing its most precious resources, its human beings, in a system they call slavery, that vicious, evil, fiendish system of enslavement, where African people were reduced to something lower than the lowest creatures on the planet. African people, African human beings were objectified and commodified. In other words, reduced to objects. Objects of utility, objects of pleasure. They could use and abuse us, whether for economic exploitation or sexual exploitation. That's what slavery was about, beloved brothers and sisters. This is why George Floyd, and for those of us who think slavery is behind us, you need to understand something called the plantation complex. We're in the psyche of the African, as well as in the psyche of the European. We're still on that plantation. We need to understand the plantation complex. In the form of the European, it's a superiority complex. In the form of the African, it's an inferiority complex. The European has exerted and exacted the right to exercise the power of life and death over the African, and it's still etched in their psyche. That's why 4 teenagers seeing Stephen Lawrence standing at the bus stop. Stephen Lawrence was standing at the bus stop. Felt that they had the right to exercise the power of life and death over Stephen Lawrence and Dwayne Brooks if they could have caught him. They felt that they had the right to take his life because they were superior to him. He was an inferior being that they could just dispose of with impunity. And they almost got away with it. But some of them still are at large. And the same thing with George Floyd, with that nasty creature, that poor excuse of a police officer, with his knee in George Floyd's neck. And look at the man's expression on his face. He wasn't even angry. He was just nonchalant. He was just calm. His hand in his pocket, the other hand on his hip, while he's pressing down on our brother's neck, squeezing the life out of him. That's the plantation complex. That mentality was nurtured throughout slavery and colonization, and it's still in the psyche of the European. You think we have in a normal relationship with them, but that superiority, that it's etched deeply in the psyche. So after hundreds of years, brothers and sisters, of enslavement, and we as Africans constantly resisting against the system of slavery, fighting against the system, disrupting the system, burning up plantations, burning up the so-called slave masters' houses, revolting against enslavement, taking the slave master's life. The system of slavery, as time went on, became less and less viable, less and less sustainable, especially after Britain had lost its largest colony, which was the United States of America. The American Revolution meant that the largest colony, where the overwhelming majority of the enslaved Africans who were brought to that region were sent. They'd lost that colony. And so it damaged the system of slavery. They don't tell us that, brothers and sisters. They let us think that, it was just through a change of heart, through, a sense of altruism, that they decide, no, they're going to end the system of slavery. No, beloved brothers and sisters, that was not the case. Right? But also, they found a way that they could perpetuate the enslavement of African people whilst they were pretending to end the system of slavery. The British never abolished slavery. That's a lie. They did not abolish slavery. They transformed the system of slavery from a from a private enterprise where an individual could own an individual African as a so-called slave. And I don't like us to use this word slave. Do not use that word to say that we were slaves. We were never slaves. We were enslaved. There's a difference. We were enslaved, beloved brothers and sisters. So let's understand this. They transformed the system of slavery from a private enterprise to a nationalized industry, where the nation of Britain now owned and was capturing land in Africa, owning Africa. And now, instead of removing the African from Africa, from the land, they were taking the land from the African. So rather than taking the African from the land, they were taking the land from the African as a cheaper form. So it cuts out that whole traveling process where you have to build ships and you have to travel from, and then 2/3 or 1/2 of your so-called cargo would be lost. So it was a more efficient way of enslaving Africans, enslave us on the continent, on the mother continent, rather than removing us thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean. And then there was another motive, the natural resources. This was during now the Industrial Revolution, the enslavement of African people that amassed so much wealth. Not only that, the ingenious of our ancestors had driven a technological development. And understand this, the technological development that occurred on these plantations were never driven or never born out of the work or the wisdom of Europeans, because they weren't doing the work. We were doing the work. Necessity is the mother of invention. We were doing the work out of necessity. We were inventing labor-saving devices, which developed into labor-saving technology, which the so-called slave master, because he had the arrogant position of saying legally he was our owner and we were not human beings, so we could not patent anything. So anything that the enslaved African invented, the slave master, so-called slave master, would take credit for it and he would patent it. So all of those technological developments that were happening in the so-called United States of America, it was through Africa. It was African genius that had been transported with the African to the Americas. So let's understand this, beloved brothers and sisters. So so we know that in 1884-85 was the Berlin Conference. That's where the Europeans, who were in the process of fighting over African land, decided they're going to sit down with a map of Africa and carve up the African continent and say, this belongs to you, Britain, this belongs to you, France, this belongs to you, Germany, this belongs to you, Portugal. No Africans there discussing anything. Like when they decided they were going to come to Africa with ships and enslave Africans, no Africans there in Europe to make any decision. No Africans there building ships. And so that conference, that infamous conference, was to seal the fate of the African continent for many decades. So we had Africa being colonized by Britain, by France, by Holland, by Portugal, Spain, Belgium, all of these nations, brothers and sisters, claiming territory on the African continent, slaughtering Africans, Africans fighting back and resisting. And so that went on, beloved brothers and sisters, for decades, as I said. But give thanks. We were always fighting, always resisting, and we have to give thanks to the Garvey movement, a revolutionary movement that came about in the 19-teens into the 1930s at its high point. The Garvey movement, beloved brothers and sisters, with the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, mobilized African people worldwide, globally. 13 million, 11 to 13 million. Baba John Henry Clark said, whatever number we agree upon, add 2 million more. For those who associated themselves with the UNIA, the organization of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, without actually establishing a membership. So without being officially members, there were unofficial branches all over the world, even in Asia, branches even in Australia, Australian so-called Aborigines. There were at least 2 branches in Australia. And so that generated a momentum, a powerful momentum in resistance. Papa Garvey mobilized us to look to Africa. Let Africa be our guiding star, our star of destiny. He called for a union of African states, our United States of Africa. He made it clear to us that our fight must be focused on reclaiming the African continent. The UNIACL in the mid-1920s, beloved brothers and sisters, were sending delegates to Liberia, and in 1924 sent 50,000 pounds worth of, or dollars rather, worth of technical, industrial and agricultural equipment to Liberia. The UNIACL was in the process of relocating its headquarters from the United States to Liberia. That was the plan. 150,000 families were poised to repatriate to Africa on the Black Star Line steamship. Remember that the UNIA had its own shipping company, beloved brothers and sisters. And that injected the spirit of revolution in Africans around the world. On the African continent, there were branches in Nigeria, branches in Liberia, branches in Sierra Leone, Ghana, branches. There was branches in South Africa, in Kenya, and all over the African continent. You had UNIA activities, unofficial UNIA in the Congo. There were unofficial UNIA activities. If we study the works of Baba Tony Martin, the foremost scholar, the late Tony Martin, who was the foremost scholar and the official historian for the UNIA when he was alive. I'm giving you this backdrop, beloved brothers and sisters, so we understand the context in which these assassinations are taking place. A very important conference happened in 1945. And that important conference was the 5th Pan-African Congress, the 5th Pan-African Congress, which was led by the Osagefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, in association with Mama Amy Jakes Garvey, Mama Amy Ashwood Garvey. In fact, the first session of that conference was chaired by Mama Amy Ashwood Garvey. That was a seminal moment in the history of Africa and African people worldwide, because it was from that conference that a number of attendants from the African continent, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Jomo Kenyatta, among others, who attended that conference, went back to Mama Africa, went back to their respective nations, and began the anti-colonial movement, or raised up the anti-colonial movement that was already existing on the African continent. And bear in mind that the Osagefo Kwame Nkrumah, who was to become the father of the anti-colonial movement, attests in his autobiography, page 37. I love to quote the page, brothers and sisters. If you ever get a hand on the autobiography, look at page 37. He tells us that he read Marx, he read Engels, he read Hegel, he read Mazzini, and he names a number of other people that he read. Number of books. He was a brilliant man. He had a number of degrees and master's degree. He had honorary PhDs. He didn't actually finish his PhD because he got caught up in liberation work. But he says of all the books he read, nothing fired his enthusiasm. Nothing fired his enthusiasm more than when he read Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. I want you to understand the importance of the legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey. And so he was a person who went back to Ghana. He was in America between 1935 and 1945. He was in America studying and engaged in different liberation movements and organizations. And then he left and came to England to do his PhD, which he did not complete. And he was sent for by a group that had been set up in Ghana called the United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC, headed by a man called J.B. Dankwa. He is the grand uncle of the present president of Ghana. Take a note of that, who also bears his name. The present president of Ghana, his name is Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. His grand uncle is the founder of the UGCC, the United Gold Coast Convention. And when they heard about Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, in fact, there was one of the members of the organization named Ajay who had met Nkrumah, told him about Nkrumah and the brilliance of Nkrumah and the great potential that Nkrumah offered. And because he was, he was a grassroots man who had the ability to connect with the ordinary people, whereas the UGCC were kind of middle class, what we call in Jamaica, tapanaris, So they sent for Nkrumah. Nkrumah came to Ghana. And I'm cutting a long story short, beloved brothers and sisters, but quite early, there was conflict between Nkrumah and the leading lights in the UGCC. Nkrumah became one of what they call the Big Six. And the conflict between the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah and the rest of the Big Six was that Nkrumah had a drive and a determination that Ghana must be independent and must be independent now. His slogan was independence now. The rest of the UGCC leadership said no, independence at the soonest possible opportunity, or some nonsense like that. So that was a conflict. And as a result of that, there was a division, beloved brothers and sisters. Kwame Nkrumah eventually left the UGCC and set up the CPP, the Convention People's Party. And straight away, Kwame Nkrumah had connection with the masses of the people. The masses of the people began to respond to Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah began traveling throughout Ghana, speaking throughout Ghana, and getting thousands of people coming out to hear him. Kwame Nkrumah was arrested in the process and accused of treason because he had made some comment about direct action against the system of colonialism. And he was arrested and imprisoned. And there was an election for the legislature, and he won that election. His party won that election whilst he was in prison, and so it forced their hands to release him from prison so he could take up the position of leader of government business in 1951. So he became leader of government business in 1951, and then began to press for the independence of Ghana, for which he had a constant fight from his adversaries, who were the other 5 of the big 6 and others within the convention, the UGCC, United Gold Coast Convention. Think about it, beloved brothers and sisters. At every stage, Kwame Nkrumah tells us in his writings, at every stage, they fought him to stop the progress of Ghana to Ghana's independence. And so Kwame Nkrumah had to press on despite all of this. That slowed down the whole process, and independence did not come until 1957. After independence came, beloved, Kwame Nkrumah did a tremendous work in Ghana, transforming Ghana now into an independent nation. Now that Kwame Nkrumah used to say, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all other things shall be added." Now, once we had political independence, Kwame Nkrumah now was striving for economic independence. In order to have economic independence, he understood that we had to control our natural resources. So Kwame Nkrumah established business models that were not just reliant on private enterprise. There was private enterprise, but there was also public enterprise and the cooperative enterprise. So a lot of cooperative enterprises were established so that the people who worked within these enterprises would have a stake in the profits that these enterprises would make. Kwame Nkrumah diversified the economy, whereas up until then the so-called Gold Coast, as there was a name, the colonial name for Ghana at the time, Kwame Nkrumah changed the name to Ghana. And on the night of his inauguration, he made it clear the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up to the total liberation of the entire African continent. And so he understood that Ghana could not sustain itself, whether politically, economically, militarily. Ghana in and of itself could not sustain itself. That the rest of the African continent's liberation was vital to Ghana's capacity to sustain its own liberation. Many people did not understand that. In 1958, Guinea became, which is close to Ghana, became independent. Guinea refused to sign a pact that France had offered, the continuation of colonization pact. Let's just think about that now. We're fighting for our liberation, fighting for independence. And France comes with this pact called, think about it, the continuation of colonization pact, which some nations signed. Guinea refused to sign. Guinea said, no, we're signing that. And Sekou Touré, who was the leading light of the Guinean independence movement, said, we prefer poverty in freedom than riches in slavery. We will go it alone. Then Ghana came to Guinea's aid and gave Guinea $10 million or pounds. Can't remember what it was. Either pounds or dollars. Because the French, as a result of Guinea refusing to sign that pact, the French trashed Guinea, destroyed what bit of infrastructure was there, trashed the offices, destroyed furniture, broke up windows, blocked up sewages, destroyed, sabotaged what little electricity we had in the country. They did everything to sabotage the country so that it would have been impossible for Guinea to make a start as a new nation, a newly independent nation. And Ghana came to the rescue by offering Guinea 10 million, which is a lot of money if you think about in 1958. 2 years later, something similar happened with Mali, and Ghana came to the rescue. Osachafo Kwame Nkrumah became the father of the anti-colonial movement on the African continent. He was highly respected. Ghana became a beacon of hope for the rest of the African continent. Ghana was showing the way to the rest of the African continent. And brothers and sisters, what the Osachafo did, he built schools, he built universities, 3 universities, 11 technical colleges, and that's very important because these technical colleges and these universities were going to create the intellectual skill and skills capital that a nation needs for nation building. The technical colleges was to ensure that we were training and equipping our young people with the range of skills that we needed, technological skills that we needed for nation building. So when you see now Africa having to rely on external entities to build our roads, to build our railways, to build our schools, to build, you name it, to build our infrastructure. The Osachafo Kwame Nkrumah was training 11 technical colleges, brothers and sisters, was training young people, instilling in them the skills. 3 universities. So the intellectual capital, the skills, technical skills capital was being generated in the nation itself. Whilst technical experts, yes, were imported in to build certain infrastructure, but always with young people serving apprenticeships so that they could acquire the skills. This was a brilliant man, brothers and sisters. This was a brilliant man. Cutting a long story short, let me just share with you, beloved. He advanced transport and communication systems in Ghana, diversified industry. Over 100 industries were developed, were established. He built a massive dam, the Akosombo Dam, which was for the purpose of supplying widespread electricity for Ghana, and also for powering industries, because he was industrializing Ghana as a beacon light for the rest of the African continent. The Osachafo Kwame Nkrumah had a clear plan to industrialize the entire African continent, and within a generation make the African continent the #1 superpower on the planet. Think about that. That was his vision, brothers and sisters. And if he was allowed to pursue that vision to its ultimate conclusion, it would be a different story today. We wouldn't be talking about China on the heels of the United States of America. We'd be talking about all of them chasing Africa and can't catch us. Because without our natural resources, they could not have developed their industries. They could not, it was impossible. Now, if Africa finds a way of industrializing and adding value to its natural resources, then what happens to the rest of, what happens to America? What happens to China? What happens to Britain? What happens to France? Because now we have the resources under our feet. We don't have to travel to get it. If we can extract our resources and we have our own industries to transform our resources into finished goods, then Africa would be the leading industrial power in the world, the leading manufacturing power in the world. Everybody would have to come to us. We would be the greatest, the #1 producers, and therefore the #1 sellers, the #1 exporters in the world. Where would that leave Europe? Where would that leave America? Where would that leave China? Where would that leave Japan? Where would that leave India? They all know this, and they are clear that the one thing that must not happen is that Africa takes control of itself. Africa takes control of its own natural resources. The Assassination for Kwame Nkrumah was crucial to all of this, beloved brothers and sisters. And I just want to share the words of the then ambassador to Ghana, the American ambassador to Ghana, speaking. And he was the ambassador in Ghana from 1962 to 1965. He said Nkrumah was everything, politically, economically, psychologically, culturally, and so on. He thus absolutely dominated the scene. Ghana was singular in the sense that it had everything. So whilst they were spreading propaganda that Kwame Nkrumah was mismanaging the economy, Kwame Nkrumah was, mismanaging the Ghana's funds, Ghana's treasury. The ambassador for Ghana, the ambassador to Ghana, the US ambassador to Ghana, was making these observations that Ghana had everything. It had educated people. It had considerable infrastructure, widespread housing, roads, hundreds, perhaps thousands of miles of roads were built under the Assassination for Kwame Nkrumah. Railways were built. The airline was established under the Assassination for Kwame Nkrumah. So it says he had considerable infrastructure, 3 universities, schools, lawyers, doctors. It had everything going for it. One of the things that the Assassination did is where the universities or the technical colleges had not yet developed the capacity to accommodate as many young people as they needed to. The government paid for young people to go abroad, to go to Britain or to go to America to study, but they had to bring their skills back to Ghana. and honed the skills in Ghana. Listen, brothers and sisters, how important this man was. He transformed the Ghana economy. At the same time, he was funding and supporting revolutionary movements all over the African continent, as far as South Africa, Zimbabwe. The Osagifo was supporting revolutionary movements on the African continent, equipping these movements, funding these movements. And beloved, eventually, the Osagifo, realizing that the American embassy in Ghana was, amongst other things, a front for CIA activity. He had intelligence on the ground that unearthed information about the CIA in Ghana, destabilizing Ghana. And in February 1964, he wrote to President Lyndon B. Johnson, complaining about the presence of CIA agents in Ghana, destabilizing Ghana, to which President Johnson wrote back denying it. But 2 years later, when the Osagifo traveled he was on his way to Vietnam, stopping off in China, and got the news that a coup had been waged on the African in Ghana. There's a man by the name of John Stockwell, ex-CIA station chief. He was a station chief in the Congo, but he was versed on what was happening in Ghana. And he said that coup was funded by the CIA and British intelligence. That coup was funded by the CIA and British intelligence, beloved brothers and sisters. So even though there was evidence that the Osagifo was a good leader, a progressive leader in Ghana, the propaganda against him was poisonous, was cynical, was sinister, because they knew where the Osagifo's inspiration would have taken the African continent. And they knew that their fate would be sealed if nation after nation on the African continent who became independent was to follow the model of Ghana under the Osagifo Kwame Nkrumah and industrialize. And then African nations begin now to trade with each other. Then we would have nullified the necessity for our involvement with ex-colonial forces. Tendai Mwari. Now, beloved, during that time, another great man rose up on the African continent. This man's name was Patrice Emery Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba, that's my favorite. Let me tell you now. I love Patrice Lumumba. I remember the first time I studied Patrice Lumumba and the Congo, I was moved to tears. Papa Patrice Lumumba, when he became Prime Minister of the Congo, these were his words. He said, "The Congo's independence marks a decisive step towards the liberation of the entire African continent." And he knew what he was saying. He knew what he was saying, beloved, because the Congo is in the center of the African continent. As I've already said, it's the richest expanse of land on the African continent, and it's in the center of the African continent. So strategically, the Congo is well placed to influence or to generate influence over the entire African continent with its strategic location as well as its range of strategic natural resources. The Congo was crucial to the liberation of the entire African continent. In fact, it's worth knowing that the conference, what became known as the Berlin Conference, was originally called the Congo Conference because it was the Congo that European nations were on the verge of fighting over. When Bismarck from Germany and Leopold II intervened and called the rest of Europe together to sit down and meet and peacefully determine how they're going to carve up the African continent and what was going to happen to the Congo, because they understood the strategic advantage that the Congo had. And then that was given, the Congo was given to Leopold II, the King of Belgium. Just imagine that as a gift, as a personal gift. It wasn't even initially owned by Belgium, it was owned by so-called King Leopold II. Think about that, brothers and sisters. Patrice Lumumba said, we are going to show the world what the black man can do when he works in freedom. And we are going to make of the Congo the center of the sun's radiance for all of Africa. He said, we are going to keep watch over the lands of our country so that they truly profit her children. We are going to restore ancient laws and make new ones, which will be just and noble. We are going to restore ancient laws, the laws of our ancestors. See where he's going? Because Patrice Lumumba had gone into the rural areas and sat down with the elders and was guided by the elders. That is why he was talking about restoring ancient laws. He knew that we had ancient laws, ancient traditions that we needed to draw upon to guide us in how we transform our African continent and how we restore our greatness on the continent of Africa. Tendai Mari, beloved brothers and sisters, the fate of Papa Patrice Lumumba was to be sealed very quickly. No other leader on the African continent was snuffed out as quickly as he was. He was in contact and in connection with the Osagifo. In fact, they had plans to federate the Congo and Ghana. We already had the Ghana, Guinea, Mali Union. Patrice Lumumba had signed up to that union, and they were canvassing other African leaders to unionize or to federate the nations. You had the Belgians in the Congo, destabilizing the Congo. You had stooges. Now remember, when the Congo was when the Congo's independence was being inaugurated, imagine the prime minister of the new nation wasn't scheduled to speak. So imagine that. They had the president, ceremonial president, the ceremonial head of state, not the leader of the government, the ceremonial head of state, who was really a stool, who was really a puppet. They scheduled him to speak. And he got up and spoke and thanked the Belgians for civilizing us in the Congo and all the great and wonderful things and gifts that they had bestowed upon us. And then the king of the so-called king of the Congo then got up and made some patronizing speech about what wonderful things, how pleased he was about the great things that Belgium had done in the Congo. And Patrice Lumumba was sitting there and he was stewing. And just imagine, Patrice Lumumba just got up and took the mic and just blasted Belgium and blasted this neo-colonial project that Belgium wanted to transform the Congo into. Many said that speech that he made, excerpts of which I've just read, was where he signed his death warrant. You had a convergence of France, Belgium, and by the way, the president's name was Kasavubu. Then you had Moise Tshombe, who was head of the Katanga region, which is one of the rich areas of the Congo. Under the influence of the Belgians, separated himself, seceded from the Congo. So attempt claim now that he was setting up his own independent Katanga. You had another character by the name of Albert Kalonji, heading the South Kasai region, another rich, minerally rich area in the Congo. He also seceded. This was through the machinations of these European forces, Belgium, France, America, Britain. In fact, the Osaja for Kwame Nkrumah, as a result of a letter from Patrice Lumumba asking for support, sent troops into the Congo and sent those troops into the Congo led by a character named Ankara, who went to the Congo and linked up with a British character named General Alexander and submitted the troops to the leadership of General Alexander, who used Ghanaian troops against Patrice Lumumba and the people of the Congo. Patrice Lumumba was captured. Patrice Lumumba was tortured. He was captured and tortured alongside Joseph Okito and Maurice Mpolo, two of his government ministers who stood by him when others had betrayed him. They stood by him. They were also tortured. And all three of them were assassinated. They were beaten. They were shot. They were stabbed. And when they died, their bodies were dismembered, burnt, and doused in acid. In fact, they were buried and dug up, dismembered, burnt, and doused in acid. That's what happened to this great man, Papa Patrice Lumumba, because he had a vision of using the Congo to liberate the African continent, linking up with Osaja for Kwame Nkrumah, with Sekou Touré of Guinea, with Modibo Keita of Mali. These were great, great leaders. We need to know their names, brothers and sisters. We need to call their names. We need to celebrate them, because all of them, brothers and sisters, have suffered for our liberation. And I need to also inform us, I need to call the name of a young warrior whose name you don't hear, brothers and sisters. But he tried to revive the spirit of Lumumba and the program of Lumumba in the Congo. His name is Pierre Mulele. Pierre Mulele. he was Patrice Lumumba's Minister of Education. He was a teacher, then he became Minister of Education. He left the Congo and went to China and other places and trained militarily, took some young people with him to be militarily trained, and came back into the Congo in 1964 and waged what was called the Simba Rebellion. The Simba Rebellion. Simba in that sense means lion. The rebellion of these young lions, these young Lumumbists came back into the Congo, and they were so well equipped, so well trained, so brave and so fearless and so tenacious that they captured nearly half of the Congo. The army of Mobutu, Joseph Mobutu as he was known then, and he changed his name to Mobutu Sese Seko, could not withstand the forces of the Simba Rebellion. But guess what? He called on America. He called on France. He called on Belgium. And they came in. All of these European nations. Now, I should also add the United Nations. The United Nations played a dirty hand in all of this. In fact, the Osage for Kwame Nkrumah exposed them in a public broadcast that he made afterwards. The United Nations was very underhanded in their intervention into the Congo. And they allowed what happened to Patrice Lumumba to happen. This is why we have to be very, very guarded as far as the United Nations is concerned. Right? The Simba Rebellion, come back to the Simba Rebellion, brothers and sisters. Pierre Mulele. Let me just tell a little bit about Kasavubu.
Kasavubu. Mention, leader, we are fast approaching the top of the hour, and I know you've only just got started as well, but yeah, we're 8 minutes away from the top of the hour, so please do bear that in mind. But the good news is that we will be continuing with you next strong, because I know you've just got a wealth of information as everyone is hearing from you, my leader. So, you know, we're privileged to, you know, be in a position where we will have you back again. So let me allow you just to finish off today's session, please, leader. And in case I don't get time at the end, I just want to thank you so much.
You will have time. You will have time, sis, because you must have the last word. You must have the last word. So let me. You've been kind enough to invite me for a few sessions, and I'm going to move into. Well, I've started the assassination, the process now of the assassination of African leaders. So next week, Kanamwariada, by the grace of the Almighty, I'll just continue and go into that. But I thought it was important to give that backdrop so that we understand the context in which. Context in which these African leaders are perceived as a threat to be snuffed out as quickly as possible, so that we don't have the kind of fortified African nations that we should and need to have. I won't go into Mobutu now. I'll leave it until next week. I'll just pick up. We're talking about the Congo, because I need to tell brothers and sisters about Pierre Mulele the vicious way in which he was assassinated, and that's very, very
Wow.
important. And I want to speak
Yeah.
also about his queen. But so let me just round off by saying, beloved brothers and sisters, give thanks for this opportunity. Thanks for your patience. Thank you very much, Medasi Papa, Sister Shanice. I close for now with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, who says, "Unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will." Rumbidzo Kunamwari ye Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai Mwari. Over to you, my sister.
Wow. Tendai Mari, Leader Bandaka, thank you so much for agreeing to accept the invitation. I'm sure everybody that's listening right now is just, feeling as though they've received a whole wealth of information. This is the sort of, education that we ought to be having on a daily basis in our universities. These are the sorts of discussions and learning that we really ought to be having in an African-centered university. So nowhere, is this happening. And so delighted that, we can even use this platform, so that we can have this sort of education and be sharing the knowledge that you've got. So thank you, Leader, for not keeping that wealth of knowledge and learnedness that you have to yourself, but, for your heart to share with the community so that we can all learn from the past, because obviously the more we learn from the past, the more likely we are to ensure that where we went wrong doesn't repeat itself. So I think I might have time to just pluck out one or two comments in the chat. And I want to thank everybody in the chat for keeping your comments and your conversations going. It all just helps to cement the learning. And let's just pull out this one here. It's what it says. Understand the principle that has underpinned world order for the past 400 years. Understand the constructive and destructive natures of nationalism. We suffer false nation or consciousness. Do you want to comment on that, Brother Leader? Understanding the principles that underpin world order and have done for the past 400 years, and that we need to understand the constructive and destructive natures of nationalism. It's a huge one we probably can't cover right now, but you might just want to say a few words.
Well, I would place the destructive nature of nationalism in the context of where we confuse our sense of nationhood with that of alien oppressive forces. And I think that's what we found with that element that that were working with the British in Ghana to topple Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. They confused their sense of nationhood with that of their oppressors. They identified with the culture, the national culture of their oppressors. They saw themselves in the image of their oppressors. And so they could not see the vision of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. And they fought against the vision. I think when we truly know ourselves and we ground our consciousness into a nation building project, then it will always be a positive process for us. Tendai Mwari. The bit about the new world order, that's important. It's important that we understand the world order that exists in the world today, and it's important that we unravel that, because we are subjects of, or we are victims of that new world order. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. Well, thank you again, Leader Bandaka. Thanks to everybody in the chat. I mean, the overwhelming response, that I'm seeing from the comments is one of huge gratitude to you, Leader Bandaka, for the learning, for the history, and for sharing of the knowledge. I want to rise up, Sister Kai, for allowing us to, have you here on this platform, because I know how busy you are as well, and how busy she is. And so, we do thank you, and we thank your entire family, leader, for allowing you, for the family to allow you to be with us in these late hours. Thank you so much. And we're already looking forward to the lessons that we're going to be having next strong. So stay strong, stay powerful, you and the entire family. And to everybody who's been watching us throughout this evening and who've been with us throughout the evening, and to those of you who were with me even early this morning from my radio show on the Big G Galaxy Afiwi, thank you so much. And do tune in again next Wednesday, all being well. And if you're a Galaxy listener, I'll be doing a community talk show this coming Saturday where you can call in and have your say. Thanks again, family. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing, for subscribing, and for joining Patreon. Again, Bandaka, thank you so much. More love, family. More love. Sister Shanice out of here for now. Budu.
Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.